My eyes flashed open, and as I sat up to look around, I found myself lying on top of a stone slab, sitting in the center of a large, dark, and otherwise empty room. I couldn't see it, but I could feel a presence lurking in the darkness. I assumed it was Icor, for who else could it be? "You have cheated me," I spat into the silence. "Have I?" It was a feminine voice, but just like before, it seemed to emanate from everywhere all at once. "No more games, Icor," I yelled in frustration. "You are beyond his reach, my dear," came the sultry voice again. On the far side of the room, a hooded figure seemed to coalesce from the darkness itself. At first, it was so shrouded in shadow that even I, with my keen dark vision, could not discern who or even what it was. It moved without sound and seemed to flow rather than walk. But as it drew closer, I noticed a marked sway in the hips with each silent step. It was a woman, or at least the image of one. But if it wasn't Icor, then who was it? "Who are you?" I asked as she grew closer. "Oh, now. Do you pretend not to know me?" she asked sarcastically, holding her hands to her heart as though I had somehow hurt her. "I am sorry," I began, "but if you are not Icor playing more tricks, then no, I do not know you." "You wound me, my dearest," she said again, feigning emotional distraught. "Perhaps you would remember a different face," she added as her form shifted and changed into the scared little girl I had seen in Celine's home earlier. "Lucy?" I asked, somewhat confused. "Ah, too young, perhaps," she said, feigning momentary forgetfulness. "Perhaps this one is more to your liking," she asked as her form once again shifted into a young woman with long dark curls and a simple brown dress tied at the waist with a green sash. "Phoebe? But you're... Oh, that's right. How forgetful of me," she said sarcastically. "You prefer this one." Her form once again began to shift and change into a much more familiar sight. "Celine!" A sudden hope that I thought had died with her was rekindled, but instantly smashed once again when I realized that the woman I had loved so much wasn't who I thought she was. "Or Diana," she said before shifting again into various forms I did not know. "Chandra, Hina, Luna." She named them as each form drifted by before finally returning to the original that had walked out of the darkness. "I have so many names, you see." "Ina," I added in shock. "One of many," she answered with a slow, deliberate curtsy. At first I could not believe it. Ina, the name alone explains so much. Ina is the ever-watchful moon in the night sky. She is one of the old gods. In fact, the oldest. One of the first two to emerge from the chaos before the creation of the universe. The matriarch of all the gods. Her eternal struggle with Iplios the Lightbringer created Etia and all the heavens around it. Goddess of the dark, mistress of the night, Queen of Secrets. She had as many titles as names. Lady of Deception. Of course. In an instant, my mind began putting the puzzle pieces together, and I began to feel so stupid for not having seen before what was so obvious now. It had not been Icor dwelling in the shadows all this time. The pact I had made was not with him at all. It was with the shadow itself. Her. Oh, she had played me like a fiddle. She baited me with Celine at the festival, stoked my desire with her absence afterward until it had become obsession. She used Thomas to fuel my jealousy and feed my more violent imagination until I would have agreed to do anything. Only then, when she knew I would carry through with it, did she offer her deal. It had been a setup from the beginning. "You are evil," I declared as I began to pace about the room looking for an exit. "Oh?" she asked simply. "How so?" "You're the Queen of Deception," I spat at her, as though that was explanation enough. "And deception is evil?" she asked. "Of course it is," I exclaimed, thinking that was more than obvious. "You are the mistress of liars." "Am I?" she asked with mock concern, as she hopped up onto the altar I had vacated. She stretched out on her belly and rested her dainty chin upon her hands. "Then we are made for each other, my dear," she said, as she began to stare at me with a little grin on her face. "I am no liar." "No?" she asked, and with a small wave of her hand, out of the darkness came the image of a young me standing before my mother. "I love you too," I had said, before the scene faded back to darkness. "Oh, give me a break. That was nothing. It was harmless. It was what she wanted to hear, and certainly better for my health than telling her otherwise." She nodded along as I explained, and then waved her hand again. This time the scene showed me applauding Sir Kaladin and the other knights in Balric for killing the werewolf. Unit before self, I argued. That was not a lie. We killed the beast, and we received praise for it. I see, she said. And this? I saw myself standing before General Bertal, explaining how the Asporian cavalry was wounded and could not attack his flank. For the greater good, I answered. We needed to break that stalemate to save lives. Of course, she agreed with a little smirk, but deception is evil. You said so yourself. I see what you're doing, but it's not the same thing. I may have lied a few times, but I did so for the greater good, I finished. Do you know my favorite kind of person, she asked, and then waved her hand once more. Out of the darkness, all around the room, there appeared dozens and dozens of little scenes playing out before me. Each one showed me telling another lie. Little things mostly, things most of us probably wouldn't even remember saying. From accepting an invitation you don't intend to keep, "Oh, I'd love to stop by for dinner next week," to polite assurances, "Yes, that dress looks lovely." Subtle and usually well-meaning perhaps, but all lies nevertheless. The ones so adept that they managed to deceive themselves, she said, finishing her thought. The more I watched, the more ashamed of myself I became. I had envisioned myself as that fairy tale knight in shining armor, the one who stands for honesty and integrity in all he does, and yet now I see that I was not. Indeed, confronted by them all at once, it would certainly appear as though I had done nothing but lie my entire life. But I stubbornly clung to my rationale and scoffed at her little show. Yes, fine, I allowed. You are correct. I have certainly told my share of lies, but never was it out of malice or ill intent. To spare people's feelings is not evil, I declared. Exactly, she agreed simply. I grew increasingly more uncomfortable as she remained silent and simply stared at me intently. She was waiting for something, but what? Fine, I added. Deception isn't always evil, then. She did not add anything. She just smiled and kept staring while my mind kept making connections. You're still the Queen of Darkness, I blurted out. Please do not tell me you've decided darkness is evil, she scoffed. I admit that's exactly what I had decided until she said it out loud and I realized how stupid it sounded. I looked back at her laying there on the altar with that smug little smile and realized what she was getting at. Darkness itself is neither good nor evil, nor is the light while I'm on the subject. They simply are. Good and evil are not things in and of themselves. They require intent. For example, one might argue that killing is evil, but is it evil to kill those who would kill you? To defend yourself or others as I had done so often? No. The intent behind the action makes all the difference. But if Aina was not evil, then why turn me into this? I asked, growing angry. Why force me to do unspeakable evil every night? I have forced nothing, my dear, she answered. The smile that at first had seemed so innocent and nonchalant was now beginning to grind on my nerves. I gave you what you asked for. You have made your own choices. No, I argued. You offered my heart's desire. I didn't desire this, I exclaimed, indicating my current condition. You wanted your love, she answered. I have given you that. An eternity with her, she said, smiling again. But my love was her, not you, I spat. Her form shifted on the altar, and Celine's beautiful face once again stared back at me. Is that better? She asked coyly. You know what I meant. You asked for me, and I delivered me, she answered. But that was before I knew who you were, I argued. And you're blaming me for that, she asked. I do hope you're joking. I was becoming quite irritated at this point, mostly because she was right. She may have set the board, but she hadn't forced me to do anything. I had made foolish choices without even really knowing what I was choosing, and now I was flailing about trying to blame her for it. I began to nod my head slowly as I accepted my own responsibility. You're right, I said, hanging my head in shame. It was me. It was all me. Aw, she purred with mock compassion. No reason to be ashamed, my dearest. You wanted more than the mundane life of a blacksmith, and now you have it. Is that so wrong? I had it, I corrected. I don't have it anymore, I added, indicating my current less-than-living condition. Merely the beginning of a new chapter full of mystery and excitement, she smiled in response. What do you mean? I asked. It was becoming clear to me that something more was happening here. She wasn't revealing the truth about my life full of ignorance just to amuse herself. This was all one big sales pitch. She wanted something from me. But what? You have only scratched the surface, my dear, she began to explain. Look at all you've accomplished. You became a knight, a commander, rising up to become a count of the humble village you were so eager to leave. All of this without the new power within you. She paused briefly, and as a slow, mischievous smile spread wide on her lips, she added, Imagine what you could do now. No, I said flatly, storming across the room and through the only exit I could see. I wasn't sure exactly what she had in mind, but given her nature, I was sure that whatever it was she was about to tell me was a lie. Whatever she wanted was for her benefit, not mine. Stepping through the large double doors, I found myself behind a lectern on the upper tier of a raised podium, looking down upon the ornately decorated nave of a temple. Glancing about in numerous places, I could see the 5 stars of Minera displayed prominently throughout the room. Initially, I was taken aback. I had assumed that I had awoken in a crypt somewhere underground. I hadn't expected to find myself smack in the middle of the temple. Of course, I sighed. Something else I had known about but paid little attention to until now. Why could I walk upon this holy ground? Because this wasn't a temple to Minera. It was hers. Ina's temples welcome the children of the night. In Etia, it is exceedingly rare because they do not last very long, but if you see a chapel or church dedicated to Ina or a priest proselytizing in her name, walk away. They are charlatans who prey upon the naive. The mistress of the night rewards deception. Her true temples and priests are disguised as those of another. Many worshippers of Hathos, Udara, Nila, Ormes, and all the other gods never knew that they were actually praying in a temple of darkness. Only the priests know the truth. In fact, the only temples you could be sure were not secretly Ina's were the temples of Iplios. As I descended from the podium, there in the front pew, lounging comfortably, staring back at me, was Ina once again. You haven't heard the offer, she purred. And I don't want to, I answered as I kept walking toward the exit at the far end. Just as I reached for the door handle, Celine appeared from the shadows. Do you not want me, my lord? She said with that same mournful tone and sad expression she had used to tempt me before. No, I don't. Your game is over. That face holds no power over me anymore, I said as I stepped out into the night. I didn't know what I was going to do now, and I walked away from that temple of broken soul. The one thing I had fallen hopelessly in love with, the one thing that had given me any hope at all in this dark and meaningless existence, wasn't real. It never had been, and now the prospect of spending an eternity beyond the grave was too much to bear.